Hello, 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 everybody on this wonderful day in Melbourne. We have some clouds, but a little bit of sun trying to come through. And outside on the track near my house, I can hear the bird song. So I'm happy for the day. I want to talk about the interview, but from a different angle. So many of us spend time worrying and stressing about interviews and how we're going to answer, those dreaded interview questions, behavioral interview questions, or questions that ask you to tell them about your experience and so on. So many people spend a lot of time practicing for the questions that are going to be asked of them. And very few people put energy and time into the questions they could ask the interviewer that could make them stand out, make them memorable. Because the way things happen is that we usually remember, I think it's called the recency factor in psychology, where we recall the most recent events or the most recent conversations. They seem to be the things that stand out in the brain. So when you get to the end of an interview, you're often invited to ask some questions. An interviewer will say, is there anything else you want to know? Do you have any questions? Now, here's your opportunity to become memorable. So yes, you do need to put some time and effort into practicing your answers for interviews. You kind of want to be in that space that if someone woke you up at 3 a.m. in the morning and asked you the 10 to 20 most common interview questions, you could literally rattle them off. That's how practiced you need to be from that angle. But from the other angle, you also need to be practiced and prepared in the questions you're going to ask at the end of the interview. And why is that important? Well, because it's a way to make connection with the interviewer. You should be trying to establish connection throughout the interview process, but some of us get nervous and we struggle. And the one chance you have to make real connection with an interviewer is when you get to ask your handful of questions, your 2, 3, or 4, 5 questions, even at the end of an interview. And here's why. Because psychology has shown that people love to talk about themselves. That is innate in all of us. We love to talk about ourselves. And so asking questions of an interviewer that is going to have them speak a little bit about themselves is a very powerful way to make connection. So your job at the end of an interview is to try and get that interviewer to talk about themselves or to reveal a little bit more about the company that may not have been covered throughout the interview process. And here's a couple of questions you can ask. So one of the questions you can ask an interviewer is, what do you love most about working for this company? And what you do with this question is you achieve 2 things. You get that interviewer talking about themselves because they're going to talk about themselves in the context of who they are and what they love about the company. But it's also going to give you insight into that company culture, some insight into the company culture, because remember, you also need to make your decision about a company. It's not just about an interviewer or a company interviewing you to qualify you for the role or for their company culture. You also need to remember that you interviewing them. You need to understand, you need to know if that company is the right company for you, the right company for the balance that you want to create in your life. And so asking that question, what do you love most about working for this company, is going to give you some insight into what makes that interviewer tick, but also insight into the company culture. Then another question you can is, what is the biggest challenge the team or the company is facing right now? That's a great question to ask interviewers because it shows or demonstrates that you have genuine interest in trying to solve problems. So you asking that question is going to have them think, oh, okay, hang on a minute. This person's interested in knowing what we're facing. Perhaps they might have solutions. And what you want to do is, as they answer that question, dig a little deeper. Have a couple of follow-up questions to that question. And one of that could be, when did the problem first start? What is limiting or is causing the challenge? And what actions have been taken so far to fix the problem? Now, if you use just those 3 little follow-up questions to that other one, what is the biggest challenge the team or the company is facing right now? Use those little follow-up questions. You are going to give you're actually going to make quite an impression with the interview, because it means you're demonstrating again that you're thinking further, you're thinking deeper, you're interested in finding out, where the problem started and what they've done to fix it, and are there limitations or obstacles in the way of fixing it. So really, really cool and important questions to ask an interviewer. Definitely going to show interest on your part, and it's going to you're going to demonstrate yourself to be, someone who thinks, who is a problem solver, and who's constantly looking for resolution. So that's a question, plus its follow-up questions, that's going to make quite a good impression and have you stand out, because very few people think to ask that type of question. So here's a question that is not used very often, but it's kind of left field, and it's the kind of question that is really going to have you be memorable. And that question is, what is the most unexpected lesson, or what is the biggest thing you've learned while working at this company? It's an unusual and surprise question that will set you apart, because it gives the interviewer, again, an opportunity to talk about themselves. And it also gives you an insight into the kind of things that could be learned from working at that company. It shows that you're interested in learning, that you're interested in gaining lessons, that you understand that life is about ups and downs, peaks and troughs, challenges, but challenges can be opportunities for learning and for growth. So when you ask this type of question, like I have used this question probably twice in my time when I was interviewing for roles. What is the unexpected lesson, or what is the biggest thing you've learned from working for that company? Because the moment someone starts speaking, they are going to demonstrate something about their personality. Are they someone who actually observes lessons? Are they someone who can turn challenges into lessons? Does the company as a whole, do they have that kind of mindset where they turn challenges or obstacles into lessons? Because all of this is going to give you insight into the company culture. But the other thing it is make you stand out, make you memorable. When I've shared these questions with my clients to use and said these 3 questions, what do you love most about working for the company? What is the biggest challenge the team or the company is facing right now? And what is the unexpected or most interesting lessons you've learned while working at the company? Those 3 questions alone are questions that my clients have shared with me when they ask those questions. Often when they get feedback, if they've gotten feedback or requested feedback from the interviewer has told them those 3 questions, or those questions you asked at the end, made you stand out as a candidate, because it showed interest. It showed that you wanted to know more about the interviewer and that you wanted to know more about the company. So it's also, when you ask those questions, especially what you love most about working for the company, or what's the most interesting or unexpected lesson you've learned, it demonstrates an interest in the interviewer. You make a connection with the interviewer without overstepping personal boundaries, without asking super personal questions about them. You can make a connection by asking those types of questions. So don't underestimate the importance of being prepared with your questions that you're going to ask of an interviewer. Yes, it is absolutely important to practice your answers for behavioral questions or any other questions, that standard interview questions that are going to come up in an interview. Questions like, what is your greatest weakness? What is your strengths? Tell me about yourself. Those are standard questions, but also very important to have questions that you are going to ask at the end, because remember that recency factor, that psychological recency factor where people remember the most recent things. So if an interview is an hour long, most of the time an interviewer is likely to remember the introduction, the start of the interview, and the end of the interview. And the end of the interview is where you get to ask the questions. You get to get the interviewer to speak about themselves or to speak more about the company. So never underestimate that preparation as well. Whilst you're preparing rigorously to answer your questions that the interviewer is going to pose to you, also prepare rigorously with your handful of questions that you are going to ask the interviewer, and watch how success starts happening. The more you practice that, the more memorable you become, and the more success you'll have with your interviewer. And the idea is to be memorable, so you, the person that gets the phone call, for the next round of interviews or even for the job offer. Have a great day. That's it for today. Have a great day. Hope you enjoy some sun if you're in Melbourne, or enjoy whatever you're doing in other parts of the world. Bye-bye.